And integrating technology into a garment can also push the industry to think again of making quality products.
With all the electronics coming to fashion, coming to wearables and these things, we have to ask the question, is this a sustainable thing that's coming? How can this contribute to sustainability, to a sustainable lifestyle for the masses, maybe even? What is the actual contemporary technology that can contribute to that? And therefore, I'm so happy that we have these experts on board. I would like to start with Hellen van Rees. Hellen is a textile designer. She graduated in Central St. Martin's in London, and she's into technology, but also sustainability. And I've heard that also Lady Gaga was wearing one of her pieces. So yeah, Hellen, the stage is yours for a short introduction of yourself. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for the nice introduction and for the invitation to be here. I'll try to share my screen. Oh, this is looking funny. Maybe this is better.
Perfect.
Yes. Great. So I'll give a short introduction on my background and a quick overview of some of the projects that I'm working on. So as you said, Thomas, my background is fashion and textile design. From studying at Central St. Martin's and Artes University of the Arts, I then started my own fashion brand based in Enschede in the Netherlands in 2012, and starting really with seasonal collections, so a winter collection and a summer collection, but always designing from the material and onwards. After doing 10 collections, it got a bit like repetitive, though presenting in all these amazing places like Paris, London, Milan, and Berlin, of course, as well, was really great. I really wanted to dive more into the details and where is material coming from and how can I actually make my designs better. So I stopped doing seasonal collections and rather took on a slow fashion approach and started working on gradually adding garments and not whole product offerings every season and again. So also promoting a slower way of buying fashion. At the same time, I got more involved in research projects and collaborations. So this is an example of diving deeper into the fashion textile supply chain in the Going Circular, Going Cellulose project, and combining different textiles and materials together into modular fashion pieces while using leftovers and making something actually special out of those leftovers or textiles with a flaw in them, while also keeping in mind the end of life of the product. So what I always try to do is create as little as possible demand for new virgin materials in the process of designing. Create as little waste as possible by making my pattern pieces very specific, and then keeping in mind also the end of life of the product. So that's very technically challenging as a designer, and I hope we'll come more to that in the discussion. Another field I got then into was a wearable technology. So an example of that is the Wearable breathing trainer project, where I work with children's physicians, doctors, interaction design, all kinds of different experts to together develop an innovative product. So breathing disorders with children, there's some figures, and the product is meant for them to be able to train their breathing technique in a fun way at home, while also being able to connect it to daily goals by playing a game, connected to the smartphone. And in this product, I also take care of using recycled materials and making the technology as much as possible in a separate piece so it can be detached. Another really nice project that I then got into because I started working also as a researcher at Saxion University of Applied Sciences in the research group Sustainable and Functional Textiles is Tex Energy, where we work with a lot of different partners, as you can see, on integrating solar cells into textiles and developing products, prototypes within the product range of these different companies. So this is a little bit the process behind it. And these are several of the results of these prototypes. So various applications from textiles for buildings to wearables like a forest ranger vest for lone workers, to a poncho for the army or window blinds. Yeah, so that was my short introduction. I hope it gives a little bit an idea of the projects I'm working on, and I look forward to discuss it further.
Thank you, Helen. Really interesting and perfect fit for our topics, like the interplay between textile fashion, maybe, but also technology. Thank you. Next on our panel is Dr. Max Marwede. He is heading the circular design team at Fraunhofer IZM in Berlin. And Max has a background in eco-design, and he's also steering or helping steer the Re-FREAM project together with us, the Berlin hub, and he's the expert for eco-design. So when it comes for process design and so on, that includes sustainability, he's the real expert. And yeah, but it's better, Max, if you explain yourself. So yeah, the stage is yours. Oh, Max, you're muted. Okay. No
Sorry, that mistake. Thanks, Thomas, for the introduction. Thanks, Helen, for your introduction. Very interesting indeed. And the right approach, I would say, especially in fashion. And yeah, my background is actually once ago I studied physics and philosophy. That's a long time ago. Now, as Thomas said, I'm heading a small circular design team at Fraunhofer IZM, which is actually a microelectronics institute. And our department, our team support companies in developing eco-design or in eco-designing products, developing sustainable products. We do also a lot of R&D projects, of course, as a research institute, applied research with companies. And we also consult companies such as Apple, but also smaller ones such as Fairphone or Shiftphone in the development of their products. And I just brought you basically one slide. I didn't want to go too much into detail, especially in new product development or when you speak about R&D projects and lab scale processes, you have a dilemma because you can actually just assess the environmental impact if you have the data to do that. And especially in the early process design stage, you don't have the data because you haven't taken the decision to assess your product, like which materials are using, which processes you are using.
There she go. There he goes. Never mind. I think Max is going to be back very soon. Maria, shall we go on? Meanwhile, we could go on with your presentation. I'm so happy that you're with us, Maria, because Maria is the research team leader of the flexible sensors and devices research team at VTT, if I'm not mistaken. And Maria is also you are, I don't want to get it wrong, but you're heading the flexible electronics part at the Carbon European
Graphene.
project. Sorry?
Graphene.
Sorry, graphene. Yeah, difference. But maybe you want to give introduction yourself. So Maria, thank you so much for being with us because you're involved in so important projects on the European level. And it's super interesting to learn more about what you're doing.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas. And indeed, I come from Finland, from VTT, Technical Research Center of Finland. It's kind of like Finnish counterpart of Fraunhofer, and I work as a research team leader there. We have a multidisciplinary team. My own background is in biosensors, chemistry, and biotechnology, and somehow through the applications I got involved with the printed and hybrid mass manufacturing methods, which means like you produce huge amounts of electronics, or huge, but anyway, in a reel-to-reel process which is very suitable for bendable and flexible substrates. And in my team, we are indeed working with these printed and hybrid functionalities. And actually, I could also show one slide. Let's see if it's this one, and I put it to slideshow. Okay. I hope you can see it, and I hope you can also see the video. So in my team, we are working quite a lot with wearable devices, which means in our case, textile integrated solutions, but it also means solutions which are attached directly to the skin, like different patches. Like in this demo case here, you can see the hand is moving, and these conductors are very conformable with the skin. So in addition to the wearables, we are also very much actively looking at sustainable alternatives for electronics and also powering of the electronics as well. That's also a very, very important research line of our team. And we are also developing printed electronic components. But quite often we are also applying hybrid methods, so meaning that we are combining, for instance, printed stretchable conductors with some silicon-based components, which are so small that despite the attachment of these components, the system is still remaining conformable and flexible and convenient to wear in the case of wearable applications. So that's very shortly about me. And let's have Max to continue his introduction.
Yeah. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. Max, welcome back. Would you like to add something to your introduction? I think it's a good fit because Maria was talking about developing materials and thinking design from sustainability from the beginning of the process. So I guess like it's similar to what you're working on, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are more on the consultancy side, but we have, of course, other departments, such as our conformal electronics departments, which do very similar things as Maria does, basically. I guess you know our colleagues, my colleagues, Maria. So there's, and as Thomas, as you mentioned, we have a joint project, Re-FREAM, where we actually support teams, design teams and artists in the development of sustainable smart textiles. So that's actually a quite new field to me. Also, the smart textile field. Usually I work with hard electronics, so that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. I think that's a very good start because I want to start with giving a little bit of an overview. Where's the actual state of sustainability for people who may be not in the industry? Like, we should talk about the textile part, but also since we're now in the electronics, like, how can, like, is there an actual tendency in electronics to become more sustainable? Because I think we're all afraid of not only textile waste, but also the electronic waste. So maybe Max, because that's maybe suitable for your background, like, do companies now think this sustainability thought from the beginning when developing, let's say, smartphones or whatever, electronic devices?
I mean, there was always a strong policy push from the European Commission and European Union, and of course the national governments, to push that sector towards sustainability, mainly energy efficiency in the recent times. So, like, you buy an energy efficient refrigerator, class A plus or whatever. Nowadays, it goes more and more into resource efficiency of electronic devices, also on the policy side. And there it becomes much more complex because, like, energy is easy to measure, basically. So you put a measurement device between the plug and the socket, and you can measure energy efficiency. But with regard to resource efficiency, it's very hard to find the right metrics and the right measures. And even if it comes to policy, it's very important to have something which you can prove, basically. So, but there is, I would say, yeah, also on the producer side, a trend. All the big players have their, for example, CO2 neutrality goals under 2030, 2025. Like Google, Apple, Philips, you can name them. But that's again energy. So going towards resource efficiency, I think it's a trend, but it's also a long way to go because it's so complicated in the industry, and you have to change a lot to actually develop a smartphone that maybe lasts for 10 years. So that's pretty tricky.
So yeah, what I get from you is like the function or the way the things work or the way they are produced, the environment, like this is key to be more sustainable. But Maria, you were also talking about using the right materials, and Helen as well. So maybe we could shift a little bit into this, like the actual product itself, especially Maria, when it comes to wearables. Where is the trend? Where can we push this upcoming technology from the beginning more towards sustainability? What is the strategy there?
Yeah, the selection of materials, I think that's really like one of the first steps, and that is something what we are quite concretely tackling at the moment. And okay, but actually, in addition to materials, I also would like to stress the process because we are using the additive process, the printing, to produce the electronic functionalities onto the substrates, and that is very. I would say that it's good in terms of the energy efficiency, as you use much less energy than in typical etching process. But then when you have the process, then you select the materials. And what we are currently doing, we are kind of trying to replace like conventional materials what have been used with more sustainable alternatives, which are based, for instance, on renewable raw materials like wood, cellulose, also bioplastics. That is one possibility. So substrate is one part of the solution. Let's say which is kind of the basis of the functionality. And then when you think about really the functional components, substances like the conductors, then we often of the rare materials. So some of the metals, the amount of materials or metals, they are not going to be sufficient for from here to eternity. So we are also looking at more abundant materials, and like this graphene flagship, which you already mentioned, Thomas, that is one possibility towards that direction, as carbon is very abundant material in comparison to some rare metals. But okay, of course, one issue one thing to take into account is the performance. That it is not often possible to get the same performance when you just replace the materials with more sustainable ones. But I think it's always a compromise, and if you use those abundant materials where you can, that's already one step forward.
Yeah, I would like to catch on with these topics, definitely. But first, I would like to ask Helen, like in technology, you think about performance. Like the question would be, are we willing to give up a little bit performance for a better, more sustainable product in the end? So does that also translate to fashion or to the textile world? Are people willing to give up a little bit of comfort or I don't know, design aspects to be more sustainable? Do you think that's an option for us consumers or for us humans in general?
Well, I don't even think that comfort and things that it's necessary to sacrifice anything. If you look at how the fashion industry has actually, over the recent years, has sped up so much with fast fashion, pushing new products all the time. It has actually led to less quality demands in textiles. So the qualities of textiles in the recent years has actually gone down because of this. And integrating technology into a garment can also push the industry to think again of making quality products, because the technology would last longer, or that kind of product would last longer than one trend or one season. So I think actually it's the opposite, and there's a lot of technologies and possibilities already available of recycled materials and things like this. And what Maria is also saying with the printing, it is a very good option, because you're only using the material what you need, and you can laminate it or attach it to a fabric, and then after the end of life also detach it again. So sometimes the optimal integration isn't the best way to go, like knitting something with the conductive yarns completely integrated might not be the best alternative, but laminating it on top regarding sustainability is, and I don't think it will be less functional.
Great, thank you. Before we talk about what printing electronic actually means, because that might be interesting for some people in the audience, Max, you had something to mention here.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Helen actually, and I think we, especially if we go into that direction, combining organic materials like in the fashion industry with electronic materials, you have to make sure at the end that there are separate recycling chains, basically. And if you really, I mean, at one time in the life, you have to be able to separate it. So that's a thing we have to really think about, because there's different, of course, different recycling streams. And the other thing, of course, if we use more energy, more materials to produce something, the best way to reduce the environmental impact is to actually prolong the lifetime. Because you can never offset the environmental impacts through recycling. So you get a small environmental benefit if you recycle, but actually you put a lot of effort into the production, so you can never offset that environmental impact. So the way you have to go actually is to produce better products. Then if you go more technical, you have to use longer living, better products. So this is, in my opinion, the way to go.
Do you think that is, how can we align this goal with the overall motivation of the fashion industry, which is to sell more goods? Or Helen, did you have something similar in mind, or another question?
Yeah, a little bit, because I totally agree with what Max is saying, but I think it also really depends on the use of the product. So with wearables, it's like a vest or a jacket or something, you want it to last long. But if you want, like one of the patches that Maria is talking about, that you wear it once and then you detach it, you can use something that's really biodegradable, and if it gets wet, it already starts decomposing, for example. So I do think the use of the product is really important to keep in mind also when making the material choices.
Nice. Now I think we're really interested in learning more about what this printing of electronic really means. Maria, can you, because you said it's additive and you have this base material which can be biodegradable and so on, but then, I mean, can you explain a little bit what's the difference here? What is this new thing? And what makes it different?
Maybe I will reshare the slide if you don't mind. So it's maybe easier to kind of catch this.
Yeah.
I guess you can see it now. Yeah. So here we can see that there is a foil or film. You can see some patterns on it. They are similar as in these other pictures here. So this is basically a solution which is, I would compare it like to graphical printing, but instead of the graphics, you are printing electronics. So in this case, these patterns here, they are conductive, and you can use them to kind of produce different functionalities on the material. And here you have attached, in this picture, you have attached on this circuit, the printed circuit, some silicon chips, sensors, Bluetooth module, and etc. have been attached to the circuit. So we are quite often talking about hybrid, printed and hybrid technologies. So in principle, you can also print also batteries, print transistors, but well, when I say the performance is not the same as with silicon-based components. So often it makes sense to do this combination, and also maybe I would like to say that when I talk about the performance, I mean mainly the performance of the electronics, not the performance of the textile itself. So I think there is also some differences in those two performances. But yeah, it's really almost, I would compare the printed electronics to printing of graphics, but with some functionalities because of the nature of the ink. Mm-hmm. And it's often, in most cases, it's first metal and semiconductor inks and the electric materials, insulators, depending on what kind of components you need to print.
Okay, great. And I think like before, or still like in the traditional process, you would like put all the copper on it, on the substrate or whatever, and then remove whatever you don't need. And in your process, you just add what you need and don't remove everything. Like exactly. And I mean, so it's more sustainable, but I think it's also important. You mentioned it before, like the cost factor, and to make it attractive, also for the industries to use this. And so, what is your opinion towards like the pricing points and the price of the materials? Is there something interesting to say about this printing technology?
Yeah, I think the pricing depends a lot on the volume. So it's you can't really say that okay, it's cheaper or is it more expensive. Depends on really how the volumes are developing. But I think that more crucial is this form factor. You can really get also bendable, even stretchable solutions, and that is, I think, for some applications it's quite crucial. Mm-hmm. Crucial indeed, and yeah, and like Helen, when you really make a skin patch, which we also call wearables, that there you really need to have material which is conformable, and mm-hmm. Also the selection of potential substrate materials is very wide. And what I think is also very good from the point of sustainability is that it seems that all the time more and more materials are emerging, especially as substrates in this field.
Okay, that's great. The substrate is basically the flexible foil or the flexible thing. Interesting.
Right.
I would like to take this again back to Max, because Max, you're designing, like we're starting with this material here, and you're designing processes more for the electronics industry. Like, how does this come into play? Would you recommend to plan these new materials into the product concept itself, or is it more like I have an idea of a product and I've already made a prototype and then I'm trying to move it towards sustainability? Like, where are the knobs, to the parameters to twist everything more into sustainability?
I guess it's all because, like, of course, the design process, everything. It's like performance, aesthetics, and sustainability. So the point is that usually you forget sustainability. So now you have, of course, trade-offs in design decisions quite often between aesthetics, performance, and sustainability. But the point is that you have to find somehow. Or let's say somehow find a way how to equally also include sustainability in the design decisions. So basically, if you go for a material, and you see, okay, it has a good performance, maybe good aesthetics, but not the best CO2 footprint, let's say, maybe you find a different one. So it's again it should be part of the design process to also look at that factor and factor that in the design process. And you cannot, like, sustainability is not black and white, basically. So there's always, even if you choose one material which might be have a higher CO2 footprint, but might be less toxic. So you have to see where you go. Do you want to go less toxic? Is it more important for that functionality and that application? And for example, it's on the skin, shouldn't be toxic. So this is actually the focus you have. So also in sustainability, of course, you take design decisions on what is your application and what is your focus. And if that, you have to then, of course, take into account that it's a higher energy efficiency, a higher energy rucksack, but less toxicity is more important for your application. So that is also, it's like a balancing out of criteria, basically, at the end, what you want.
That's super interesting to learn that there's not one sustainability, but maybe different tastes of sustainability, so to say.
Of course.
Are there any political regulations coming up? We've heard about in the US with Biden. There's going to be a much more focus on sustainable industries and so on. Is that, and also in the European Union, it has been a topic for a while now. So where do these kinds of, to all of you, like raise your hand if you want to give the answer. Where does this, the European Union and this market steer to? What is the opinion of the politicians who make these decisions? What is more important, the toxic factor or the footprint of the CO2? I mean, these are also political questions, I guess. Like, are there any regulations coming up in the near future? Do you know anything about these kinds of things?
For usually policy regulates mass markets. So if you talk about like wearables, smart textiles, it's not yet a mass market. So there's not for that specific application, there's regulations coming up. But as soon as it's a mass market, there will be product regulations. The focus of the European Union at the moment is, of course, still CO2 neutrality. The other focus is, for example, if you look at the Circular Economy Action Plan, is the right to repair, basically. So are there enough spare parts available? How long is the lifetime of the products? Can you access the product to repair it? So this is a big on the consumer side, a big thing. And of course, lifetime, modularity, and even going into software, like software obsolescence. So how long is your software being updated? So I think there's some discussion on, at least for smartphones, for at least 2 years. So you should get a software upgrade for at least 2 years. And I think if, like, we always talk now about hard and software combination. So I think that's very important part, to not produce obsolescence of the product through software obsolescence, because it's not safe anymore. For example, data safety, data security, to use your product, because you don't get security updates anymore. So that's a big topic also.
I mean, it's very interesting to think about this topic for your clothing. Like, maybe you don't get a security update for your clothes anymore, like in a few years. And that's kind of exciting to think about. I mean, Helen, do you think, like, these software updates, they could play a role in a sustainability strategy of the future of clothing? Like, maybe give clothing an update instead of throwing them away, or something like that. Is that is there a way of that you see that could be feasible? Like, or
I'm not a software expert, of course, but I do imagine it plays a role in keeping your smart garment up to date and relevant, to keep the software up to date and relevant. If it becomes an old system, like who uses still Windows XP and your wearable is still on this, then nobody is going to use this anymore. So in that terms, definitely. And I do want to add to what Max was saying about the governments. Another part is that they all have these targets of being completely circular in 2050. However, realistic it is that public tenders do all take into account this part. So like the local municipality here in Enschede was buying the new formal wear for their employees. They all take into account they want to be circular in 2050, but don't always know exactly what that means or what is the difference between circularity and sustainability. It's also a part that has to then be educated. So I think Maria wants to add to that as well. But so that's another part, and textiles is a really important part of that, because it has such a complex supply chain of so many different materials and material combinations. So it's a huge challenge ahead.
Okay, Maria, did you?
Yeah, I had one thought related to this upgrading or updating. I was thinking that also this eco-design principles should be now kind of taken into account, and I think like modular designs is one option towards that direction, because it can be that definitely if you have some functionalities that they are aging and can't be used forever, but can be that some parts of the functionality can live longer, and then I think the solution should consist of different modules which can be replaced, and that also might help in the towards the end life of the product, so that you can disassemble these functional systems from the clothing, and then that will make the sorting and collecting the items then easier.
Okay. Yeah, great. Max?
So I think the long-term vision, and I think there Maria technologies come into play, is that, of course, on the one hand, you open up the design process to external requirements from stakeholders like recyclers or repair centers. Oh, now Maria's gone. She comes back. Sorry, Maria, you're still there. Yeah, you're still there. Sorry. On the other hand, I think you have to open up the production processes also. So if you think of urban manufacturing, maybe you can open up and there's more and more being locally produced by local fab labs or maker spaces, and the whole product design process, manufacturing process will change, because you use locally produced goods where you have open source designs for. And so I think in the long term, I don't know whether it will be really more sustainable, but it can be if you direct it to be that you go back, even in very complex technologies, to local production.
Okay, thanks. Helen, you were shortly gone, but this is kind of independent from what was said while you're gone. Like, I wanted to also elaborate a little bit on this, what you said, like circular economy and sustainability. Could you help us differentiate a little bit these terms for people who don't know what the difference is? I think that's important. Helen. Okay, Helen, do you hear me? Maybe not. Okay, no worries. We can go on with that later. So I would also, I'm also super interested in Maria, this graphene project that you were mentioning. That graphene could be one of the future materials that could replace these rare earths and so on. would you like to give us a little bit more details about what graphene is and why this is such an important topic, especially in the European Union?
So it's a certain form of carbon, very thin material and kind of planar carbon, and it's very conductive, and also because of the structure you can create like bendable and flexible structures and components from the graphene. And this graphene flagship, it's indeed a very large project, and the flexible electronics is only a small part of the project. It's a European Union flagship projects, and what we are doing in that flexible electronics work package, we are looking at graphene-based electronics, graphene as a solution process, the flake solution. Graphene flakes in solution, that's a raw material, and also carbon vapor deposited graphene as a raw material. And we are looking at this printed graphene, but in addition to that, we are also looking at the integration of graphene directly to fibers, yarns, and fabrics. So this is an activity which we started now less than a year ago. So I'm very excited to see how that activity is moving forward.
And this, sorry to interrupt you, but this graphene material, is it a sustainable material? Is it something that can be decomposed, or because it's carbon based? That sounds
it's carbon based, and well, carbon is one of the most abundant materials on Earth. So I'd say that by nature it is very sustainable, and it's very abundant. If you think graphene as a conductor, and when it's printed, so it doesn't yet come on the same level as silver, but depending on the application, you can kind of tailor the structures so that you can live with that. And
nice.
It's always better when you have plenty of material.
That's definitely one part of sustainability. Yeah, Max?
I have to say, as far as I know, I'm a bit doubtful actually, because as far as I know, graphene is on the scarce or critical material list of the European Commission, and that might be more depending not on the material type, carbon, but actually on the availability of graphene. So depending on where it's produced, how high the production capacity is, and so on. There's might be limited availability on graphene, so that's why it might be on the critical material list for the European Commission. But of course, talking about processes, you also have to. I'm not an expert in graphene, but you also have to see how energy or how efficient the production processes of graphene is. So if you think of also silicon is probably one of the most abundant material in the world, but to produce a silicon wafer is very, very energy intensive. So there's a difference between material abundancy and the actual end product, let's say, or end material, because there's many process steps between the actual raw material and the final material which you use for electronic manufacturing.
Yeah, you're right. There is no simple answer to that question.
But it's interesting to now, like we are already talking about the challenges when it comes to sustainability. What is the things that we are working on now or tomorrow, like the near future challenges or the actual challenges now? We have talked about that materials. It could be rare or energy intensive to harvest or so. And we have also talked about production methods. Is there any other, or is there something to add, or are there more challenges that you or the industry is working on at the moment when it comes to sustainability in our field?
I think Helen was already mentioning it. Basically, at the end, it's also the user, right? So, the idea is basically like, how do you develop products which are also have the performance and the aesthetics and the sustainability and actually the lifetime. So at the end, it's also a consumer decision, and to inform and educate the consumer. And there's a big step between, of course, information, knowledge. Like everyone knows flying is not good, but everyone flies to holidays, so including me. So there's a big step between changing your own behavior and knowing what you should do. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges, to change your own sufficiency, basically, to live with that, what you need, and well-being, and have a time, enough time for your family, friends. And maybe this is more important than buying more stuff at the end.
Okay. I also think that the wearables offer a really suitable place for also new business models regarding that, because there's a lot of wearables that are aimed at well-being or coaching, training. The wearable breathing trainer that I'm working on, for example, as well, it could be more like it's lent to the user for a period of time and then return to the producer or to the company and then lent again to another user. This way, there's also more control over where is the garment ending up to at the end of life. So it's also, sustainability is also a part of how do you structure your business model, and this way also a product can end up to be more profitable because you can, lend it maybe for a less amount of money, but to more clients, and that also challenges the producer to make it as high quality as possible, because that will actually give it a longer lifetime and more cycles, basically.
This is like the share economy.
Yeah, share economy.
Share economy. Like we know it from the future of cars, for example, or Airbnb. Even share your house, share your flat. But would you also share your clothes with with other people? I mean, that's very interesting. I haven't thought about it, to be honest, but
there are already clothing libraries.
Okay,
that's happening. Yeah.
Super cool, interesting. Also more fun, actually. I mean, I think that is an interesting solution for the demand of fast fashion. You can get every day something new, just change with somebody else, exchange clothing. That's great, cool. So let's go a little bit, when we're talking about these concepts, let's dive a little bit more into the future concepts. Like, where do you guys think this is heading, or what do we need as a society or industry now with the upcoming electronics in clothing? What would be something that we should do now if we would have everything available, or if what would you like to get into the market, or is there something that we can do now? I think Helen, you have also a good idea about like what we need for clothing to make them more sustainable.
What I find really interesting initiative that's coming up now or is being developed is a passport for your garments, because as a designer, and then especially as a consumer, you cannot expect them to know exactly what is in their garment and where to put it, and it's very complicated. So it's part educating them, but it's also a part making the technology better, so we all can be informed more about what is actually in our product. So this garment passport product passport is like a chip or a component integrated into a product where it says exactly all the ingredients, basically, so that it makes it possible, or you have to be more aware of what you're selecting as a producer or as a designer as well, because you have to put it in the passport. And now it's so random, with sometimes not even mentioning the percentages and of combinations of materials. And yeah,
nice.
I think,
yeah, Max.
Totally agree. I think you can also start to make the product more smart. If you start to make the product smarter, you can use, for example, condition monitoring, like especially in electronics, to see what's the state of the product, how long was it used. If you go to pay-per-service business models, you can account on the use time, for example, of the product. You can add user stories, for example, and you can bring that to new platforms. For example, if you, let's say, rent a tent somewhere and you've been there with the tent in the arms, you can maybe show a picture, load it up to your garment, to your smart tag in the garment, and others can see when they rent the tent, or this tent has been in the Arns, or cool, now I'm in the Alps, so it has been in 2 mountain ranges already. So I think there's many things you can do also on the user side to make that a nice experience when you rent stuff, because you have the history, the story of a garment, and you maybe inherited a jacket from your father. It's history, and you can make the same with garments.
Nice, yeah. I mean, in the early days, earlier, like a good quality shirt, it was given to the next generation. They didn't throw it away; they kept it just like a treasure or something, because it was super worthful, right? Maria, I think you're also working on solutions, and you're part of these scientific research projects. If not sustainability, but where does this whole thing go to? What is your vision for sustainability or the technology as such? Where do we go with this whole industry at the moment?
I would I would like to add on this product passport or product labeling. I also think that definitely will be the future, and in addition to exploit it in kind of using the garment for a long time, I think it can also help when really the product comes to the end of the lifetime. Then when you recycle the material or partially reuse the material. So I think it can be very helpful there as well in sorting and collecting the materials again. And I think this I also think that here also we need some new business models which are kind of, I feel that probably there is we are going to, there will be a must that we live, which is maybe not happening yet, but I think it will definitely come. But also maybe to add on these functionalities, that what can be added to the textiles is that as such they can also contribute sustainability by improving people's quality of life and their health, and kind of that's also sustainability, one aspect.
Okay, Maria, thank you.
Sustainability.
Can you just repeat one thing, because it was cut away from my video recording here, like the business cases? I think that is very important, because if you have a business on something, the whole thing grows, and you said like business cases are important for sustainability. Right?
I was saying that also when you kind of recycle and reuse, that there needs to be a business model which is enabling the profitability of the system.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I think that is, it makes complete sense. Max, yeah?
Yeah, I think we also have to think more about like how can we use electronics for the greater good. Let's say, let it be a social benefit, a health benefit, or environmental benefit. So I think there's many applications. If you think of IoT applications where you can improve material streams, traffic flows, energy, water flows. So like in production, you can improve processes. So there's many applications where you can use ICT to improve the environmental footprint of certain things. You always have to consider that if you have to bring in electronics, you first increase the environmental footprint of the overall product. Mm-hmm. So yes, also have to somehow on the sustainability side again balance this out and say, but I have a added benefit, added environmental or social benefit because I use electronics. And I'm not a fan of developing the next gadget like LED blinking T-shirt with electronics because it doesn't really have added benefit. So if you always, as a designer, as a product developer, you always need to think, in my opinion, like what is the added benefit if I introduce electronics into my product?
Okay, thank you, Max. Is there any